The royal guards, dressed in their iconic red uniforms and tall black bearskin hats, have been a part of British tradition for centuries. To most people, they are nothing more than statuesque figures who stand at attention for hours, silent and unmovable, protecting the royal family and the palaces. Their presence is a symbol of discipline and loyalty, representing the strength and security of the monarchy itself. Tourists from around the world travel to the UK just to see the guards, marveling at their stoic expressions and perfect posture. There's something almost otherworldly about the way they stand still, as if frozen in time, their every move calculated and rehearsed. People often wonder how they can remain so still for so long without showing any sign of discomfort. The truth is, their training is intense and rigorous, designed to mold them into the ultimate picture of control. It takes years of practice to master the art of standing motionless for hours on end. The royal guards are expected to maintain perfect composure, no matter what happens around them. Whether it's a flurry of tourists taking photos, children running past, or even the unpredictable British weather, nothing should disturb their focus. However, while their presence is often admired, very few know about the human side of these guards. Beneath their stoic expressions and impassive faces, they are, in fact, real people with their own thoughts, feelings, and personalities. They come from diverse backgrounds, hailing from different parts of the country. They join the British Army for many reasons: a sense of duty, a love of tradition, a desire for adventure, or even simply a way to serve their country. But what unites them all is their commitment to their role as the guardians of the monarchy. Each guard has a story to tell. Some of them have spent years training for this moment, dreaming of the day they would march in front of Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. Others are simply serving as part of their military duties, following the traditions that have been passed down through generations. Regardless of how they arrived in their position, they all share one thing in common: an unwavering respect for the royal family. Most of the time, the guards keep their emotions hidden behind their solid facades. They know they are part of something much larger than themselves. They are protecting a centuries-old institution that represents the heart of the nation. Their job is not just about standing still. It's about upholding the dignity and honor of the monarchy. They are a visible part of the royal family's security team, a constant reminder to the world that the royal family is not only adored, but fiercely protected. Yet, when the guards are not standing at their posts, they are often seen as ordinary men and women who lead quiet lives outside of the public eye. They spend most of their time in training, preparing for any situation that might arise. Despite their strict training, they have their own moments of humor and camaraderie. In the barracks, away from the public eye, they joke with each other and share stories of their time in the army. Some talk about their families back home, while others reminisce about their travels and the unusual sights they've encountered while serving. But even when they are off duty, the guards remain connected to the royal family. They are given the privilege of serving at some of the most important events in the country, such as royal weddings, state dinners, and other ceremonies. These events often place them in close proximity to the royal family. But they are trained to keep their distance, always remaining in the background, unseen but never forgotten. At times, the guards observe the royal family from afar, witnessing moments that the public will never see. They are present during family celebrations, significant milestones, and even private moments of grief. And though they remain silent and distant, they are part of the royal family's life, sharing in their joy, sorrow, and triumphs. The royal family, too, has a deep respect for the guards. They recognize the sacrifices these men and women make in order to protect them. The guards are not just faceless figures standing outside Buckingham Palace. They are individuals who dedicate years of their lives to ensuring the safety and dignity of the monarchy. It is a relationship built on mutual respect, even if it is often unspoken. In many ways, the royal guards are a reflection of the monarchy itself, stoic, disciplined, and unwavering in their commitment to the nation. They may not show their emotions on the outside, But that doesn't mean they are without feelings. The royal family is acutely aware of the pressures and responsibilities that come with their role, and they acknowledge the sacrifices the guards make to protect them. One of the most striking things about the royal guards is the unspoken bond they share with the royal family. While the public sees the guards as a symbol of the monarchy's power and strength, the guards themselves see the royal family as human beings, just like anyone else. They are not blind to the challenges the royal family faces, nor are they oblivious to the emotional toll that comes with being in the public eye. They, too, have witnessed moments of vulnerability and tenderness within the palace walls, even though they are never allowed to participate in those moments. For the guards, it's about knowing their place. They are not there to engage with the royal family on a personal level. Their job is to remain silent, to observe, and to protect. However, that does not mean they are indifferent to what happens around them. When the royal family faces moments of celebration or loss, the guards are there, standing firm. But their loyalty and devotion are not just to the institution. They are also to the people who make up that institution. Even though their job is one of the most visible and public in the world, the guards are often overlooked. They stand at attention, day after day, without fanfare or applause, doing their duty with quiet pride. The public marvels at their ability to remain composed, but few know what goes on behind the scenes. The guards are often seen as little more than living statues, yet they are the ones who form the protective wall around the royal family. Their quiet devotion is something that many people fail to appreciate. But for the guards themselves, it is the very reason they serve. In the next parts of the story, we will explore how, despite their unflappable composure, these guards sometimes break their traditional roles in the most heartwarming of ways. Their humanity shines through during rare and beautiful moments of connection with the royal family, showing the world that even the most disciplined individuals have soft hearts. These moments may be few and far between, but they reveal the deep bond between the guards and the monarchy, built on respect, loyalty, and an understanding that beneath the uniforms, the guards are just like everyone else, human. It was a warm summer afternoon when the event took place, one that would go down in history as a moment of warmth and humanity. The royal guards, as always, were stationed outside Buckingham Palace, standing tall and motionless. On this particular day, the palace grounds were buzzing with excitement. A group of young children had been brought to the palace for a special tour, eager to see the famous guards up close. Their eyes were wide with wonder as they walked around the courtyard, their footsteps light and full of energy. Among them was a little girl, no older than 6, who had always dreamed of seeing the guards in person. She had heard stories from her parents about how strict and serious they were. She imagined them as stern soldiers who never smiled, never moved, and never spoke. To her, they were like statues unbothered by the world around them. As she approached one of the guards, her excitement got the best of her. She was so eager to get a closer look that she didn't notice the small stone on the ground beneath her feet. In an instant, her foot caught the stone, and she tumbled forward, losing her balance. Her eyes widened in shock as she fell, her hands flailing to catch herself. The group around her gasped, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. But what happened next was completely unexpected. The guard, a tall man with an impressive bearing, who had stood motionless for hours like a soldier on duty, broke his stillness. In one swift motion, he bent down, his hand reaching out to steady the little girl. Usually stern and unyielding, softened for a brief moment. He looked at her with kind eyes, making sure she was unharmed. The little girl, still startled, looked up at the guard. She had never seen him up close before, and in that instant, she saw something she hadn't expected, a human side to the figure who had always seemed so distant. "Are you okay?" the guard asked, his voice gentle and reassuring. His tone was so different from the cold, formal manner people usually expected. The little girl nodded shyly, still trying to gather her senses. The crowd around them had gone silent, surprised by what they had just witnessed. The guard's actions were so out of character for someone in his position that even the other tourists couldn't believe their eyes. The little girl's parents quickly rushed over to check on her, but the guard stayed close, making sure she was steady on her feet before he let go. With a soft smile, he gave her a little nod, acknowledging that she was fine. She smiled back, a mixture of awe and relief in her eyes. For the first time, she saw the royal guard not as a statue or a symbol of power, but as a real person who cared about others. The event was small, but it had a lasting impact. Tourists who had gathered around the guard were quick to pull out their phones, snapping pictures and recording the moment. Soon, the story spread across social media, and it was not long before people from all over the world were sharing the heartwarming scene. News outlets picked up the story, and for days, people spoke of the unexpected kindness of the royal guard. It was a rare moment, something that would be remembered for years, a glimpse of humanity in a world that often seemed impersonal and distant. For the guard, the incident was nothing out of the ordinary. He had simply done what anyone would do in that situation, helped someone who had fallen. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a reminder that sometimes small acts of kindness can make the biggest impact. But for those who witnessed it, it was a reminder of something more. It showed that beneath the rigid training and strict expectations, the guards were just like everyone else, humans with feelings, capable of warmth and compassion. Later that day, the guard returned to his post, resuming his role as the protector of the palace. His expression returned to its usual stoic composure, and he stood tall, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. But in his mind, the image of the little girl's smile stayed with him. He couldn't help but think about how the world saw him, and how this brief interaction had shattered the image of the distant, emotionless soldier. It was a reminder that even the most disciplined individuals had a side to them that was soft, human, and vulnerable. For the young girl, the encounter was unforgettable. She had always looked up to the royal guards with awe, but now she saw them in a new light. The man in front of her, who had appeared so distant and impersonal, had shown her kindness when she needed it most. In her mind, the royal guards were no longer just statues. They were real people who, despite their role and their rigid training, had the ability to care for others. She would remember that moment for the rest of her life, carrying with her the image of the tall, silent guard who had broken character to help her in her time of need. As the story of the guard's kind gesture spread, it sparked a conversation about the royal guards and their role in society. People began to realize that, while these men and women were undoubtedly dedicated to their duty, they were also capable of moments of tenderness and empathy. It wasn't just about standing still and looking imposing, it was about being part of something larger, something that required not only discipline but also compassion. The royal guards were more than just symbols of authority. They were a reflection of the monarchy's values, which included care, respect, and protection. The guard, whose small act of kindness had become a viral sensation, was suddenly in the spotlight. Though he was grateful for the attention, he remained humble, refusing to take credit for anything more than a simple act of kindness. In interviews with the media, he spoke about the responsibility of being a royal guard, the pride he felt in his role, and the sense of duty that drove him. But he also acknowledged that moments like these, when the world saw the human side of the guards, were important. They helped people see that behind the uniforms and the stoic expressions, the guards were just like anyone else, living and working with a deep sense of responsibility and care. For the royal family, the event was also a reminder of the close bond they shared with the guards. They recognized that these men and women were not just there to protect them, but also to serve the nation with dignity and respect. The kindness shown by the guard that day was a reflection of the values that the monarchy held dear: service to others, compassion, and humanity. In the weeks that followed, many more stories emerged about the royal guards breaking character in similar ways, showing their human side to those around them. It wasn't that they had suddenly become different people. It was simply that the world was beginning to see them for who they truly were. People with hearts, emotions, and the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. As time passed, the world began to learn more about the royal guards and their bond with the royal family. While the moment with the little girl had captured the hearts of many, it was far from an isolated event. Over the years, there were other instances when the guards, known for their discipline and stoic presence, revealed a different side of themselves. One that was filled with warmth, compassion, and deep respect for the royal family. These moments were subtle but meaningful, and they painted a picture of a relationship built not just on duty, but on genuine connection. One of the most touching stories that surfaced was about a guard who had served the royal family for nearly 2 decades. His name was Sergeant Thomas, and he had spent the majority of his career stationed outside Buckingham Palace, a familiar and unchanging figure in the sea of tourists. To the public, he was simply one of many who stood tall and silent, his eyes never wavering, his posture never slackening. But for those who had known him over the years, Thomas was a man who embodied the true essence of loyalty and devotion, not only to the crown, but to the family he had been entrusted to protect. Sergeant Thomas had first joined the British Army as a young man, eager to serve his country. After rigorous training, he was selected to be a part of the prestigious Royal Guard, a role that he viewed as both an honor and a responsibility. He had always been committed to his duty. But it was during the quiet moments when he was alone at his post, reflecting on the years of service, that he began to develop a deep sense of admiration for the royal family. Over the years, Sergeant Thomas had observed the ups and downs of the royal family weddings, births, and the celebrations that came with them, but also the difficult times. He had seen the royals cope with public scrutiny, with the weight of their duties pressing down on them, and with moments of sorrow and loss. It was during these more somber times that the Guard's role was especially important. They were not just there to protect the royal family physically. They were also there, in a sense, as emotional pillars, offering quiet support through their unwavering presence. One particular memory stood out to Sergeant Thomas. It was during a difficult period for the royal family, the passing of a beloved royal figure. The entire country was in mourning, and the royal family was no exception. The atmosphere at Buckingham Palace was heavy with grief. And even though the palace was still open to the public, there was a palpable sense of sadness in the air. The guards, as always, stood silently outside, maintaining their usual composure. But behind their stoic expressions, many of them were processing their own emotions. On one such day, as Sergeant Thomas was standing guard, the young prince, whom he had watched grow up over the years, came outside to take a walk. The prince, visibly affected by the loss, appeared to be deep in thought, his usual energetic demeanor replaced with a somber quietness. As he walked past Sergeant Thomas, the young man gave the guard a brief nod, acknowledging his presence. For a moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a silent recognition of the weight they were both carrying. Sergeant Thomas had been with the royal family long enough to know that, while they were often surrounded by a team of support, there were times when they, too, felt the sting of loneliness and loss. In that brief moment, the guard could see the vulnerability in the prince's eyes. Without saying a word, Sergeant Thomas offered a small gesture, one that was not part of the training manuals. He gave a slight bow of his head, a simple, respectful gesture that conveyed his silent support. The prince nodded back, a small but meaningful acknowledgement of the bond between them. It was an unspoken moment, one that was not meant for the public eye, but one that carried immense significance for both the prince and the guard. In the days that followed, the prince seemed to take solace in the steady presence of the guards. There was something comforting about knowing that, no matter what happened inside the palace walls, the guards would always be there, silent, unmoving, but ever present. For Sergeant Thomas, that moment with the prince had become one of the most meaningful in his long career. It wasn't just about standing at attention or following orders. It was about being there for the family in a way that words could never express. As news of the incident began to spread, other stories surfaced of similar interactions between the royal guards and the royal family. These were not grand, dramatic moments, but small, quiet exchanges that spoke volumes about the respect and affection shared between them. The guards were not just there to look imposing. They were also there to witness the private lives of the royals, to see the moments when they needed support, even if it was just through a small gesture. Over the years, as the royal family continued to face public challenges and personal struggles, the guards remained a constant presence. They became more than just protectors. They became quiet witnesses to the lives of the royals, observing their joys and sorrows with a deep sense of understanding. While they were never allowed to engage with the family in a personal way, they developed a deep empathy for those they were tasked to protect. In the case of Sergeant Thomas, his role had evolved over the years. He was no longer just a soldier. He had become an integral part of the royal family's life, even if they never spoke to him directly. His service had grown beyond the duties he had been assigned at the start of his career. The deep respect he had for the royal family was mutual. The prince, who had once been a young boy full of energy, had grown into a man, and the guard had watched this transformation with pride. It wasn't just about following orders anymore. It was about being there in times of need, offering silent support when the world seemed too loud. The relationship between the guards and the royal family was built on something far more than duty. It was built on trust, understanding, and the shared experience of living under constant scrutiny and expectation. For the rest of the world, the royal guards remained the perfect symbol of discipline, unshakable in their duty. They stood tall, their faces impassive, as always. But for the royal family, they were something more, a quiet, constant presence, offering unspoken comfort and support during the most difficult times. Sergeant Thomas, like many other guards, was content in his role. He did not seek recognition for his actions, nor did he want the world to know about the small gestures that had meant so much to him and the royal family. His job was to protect, to serve, and to remain a silent figure in the background. But in his heart, he knew that he had made a difference not through grand gestures, but through the quiet moments of understanding and empathy that only those who had served for as long as he had could truly appreciate. The royal guards had always been a symbol of unyielding strength and unwavering commitment to the royal family. Their disciplined training, years of service, and stoic presence were an essential part of what made the monarchy so respected and admired. However, there were times when the royal guards, though always maintaining their composure in public, showed a side to their duty that was rarely seen by the outside world. These were the moments when they broke character, offering silent support during times of national crisis, showing that beneath their military precision, they were deeply human. One such time occurred during a moment of immense national sorrow, the sudden and tragic passing of the beloved monarch. The country was in mourning, and the royal family was devastated by the loss of the Queen, who had been a constant figure in their lives and the heart of the nation. As news of her death spread, the public reacted with an outpouring of grief, and the royal family found themselves surrounded by condolences, messages of support, and, of course, the weight of their own personal sorrow. For the royal guards, this moment of crisis was unlike any they had faced before. Their usual role was to stand watch, keeping a vigilant eye on the palace and ensuring that the royal family remained protected at all times. But during this period of mourning, their duties took on a deeper significance. They were not only protecting the royal family from external threats, but were also there as a silent, steadfast presence during the darkest days of their lives. The palace grounds were filled with a solemn atmosphere, with mourners paying their respects and members of the royal family trying to cope with the immense loss. The royal guards, who had always maintained a dignified distance from the family, found themselves in a situation where the line between their professional duty and personal empathy began to blur. The guards knew that they had to be strong for the family, but they also understood that their strength was needed in ways that went beyond mere protection. On the day of the funeral, The mood at Buckingham Palace was heavy with grief. The entire royal family was in attendance, dressed in black and mourning the loss of their matriarch. The atmosphere was one of profound sadness. But even in the midst of the sorrow, there were moments when the guards quietly showed their unwavering loyalty and compassion. As the royal family gathered for a private moment of reflection before the funeral procession began, one of the guards who had served the royal family for over 15 years found himself standing just a few feet away from the family, watching as they comforted one another. The guard, whose name was Corporal James, had known the Queen for years. He had watched her lead with grace, strength, and wisdom, and he had always been in awe of her ability to bear the weight of the crown with such dignity. But on this day, as he observed the royal family in their grief, he felt a deep sense of respect for them, not just as the monarchy, but as people who had lost someone they loved dearly. As the royal family stood in quiet sorrow, Corporal James could see the young prince, who had been particularly close to the Queen, standing at the back of the room. His shoulders slumped in sadness. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the room. The prince's gaze was filled with sorrow, and in that instant, Corporal James felt the weight of the loss on the prince's shoulders. Without thinking, he took a small step forward, offering a silent, respectful bow to the young prince, a gesture of support, of understanding. The prince, in return, gave a slight nod, acknowledging the guard's presence. It was a small, private moment, but for both of them, it held deep meaning. In the midst of such a painful time, the guard's simple act of respect and acknowledgement was a way to show that they were not just there to protect physically, but emotionally as well. The prince was not alone, and the royal family could rely on the silent strength of the guards to help them through the most difficult time of their lives. The days that followed the funeral were just as somber. As the country began to heal from the loss, the royal family had to continue their public duties, but the pain was still fresh, still raw. The royal guards, too, found their roles changing slightly. They were still standing at attention, still guarding the palaces, but there was a noticeable shift in the way they interacted with the family. The usual formalities seemed less important in the face of such profound loss. The guards, though never speaking more than necessary, were more attuned to the needs of the royal family. During one particularly difficult evening, as the royal family gathered in a private room in the palace, the young prince once again found himself standing alone, looking out of the window. The quiet of the room matched the stillness in his heart. The guard stationed nearby, a seasoned veteran named Sergeant Williams, noticed the prince's solitude. Instead of staying rigid at his post, as the rules dictated, Sergeant Williams subtly moved closer, making sure to keep a respectful distance. He had served the royal family for many years and had seen the prince grow from a young boy into a young man. In that moment, he understood the prince's grief and, without a word, took a brief pause from his duties to give the prince space to grieve. Sergeant Williams didn't offer comforting words he didn't need to. His presence was enough. He stood quietly, offering the prince the silent support he needed to process his emotions. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, one that, in its simplicity, conveyed that the guard understood the weight the prince was carrying. The prince, aware of the guard's silent presence, turned and gave him a quiet nod of gratitude. It wasn't much, but in that exchange, there was a deep sense of understanding. The guard didn't need to do more than stand by, showing that sometimes, just being there was enough. As the days turned into weeks, the royal family slowly began to regain their composure, though the grief never fully left them. The royal guards remained their steady, silent presence, offering support during the most challenging moments. Their role was never about seeking recognition or praise. They were there to serve, to protect, and, when the time came, to offer an unspoken form of comfort. The guards had always known the weight of their duties, but this crisis revealed the true depth of their commitment not just to the monarchy, but to the people they protected. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the relationship between the royal family and the royal guards became even stronger. The family recognized that the guards were not just military figures standing watch over them, but individuals who, despite their silence and stoicism, were capable of offering compassion and support in ways that words could not express. The guards, for their part, knew that their role went beyond just being protectors. They had witnessed the royal family's vulnerability and had offered their unwavering support in times of need. It was this bond, this deep connection between the monarchy and its silent protectors, that became more evident than ever before. As the years passed, the royal guards continued to serve with the same unwavering commitment and dedication. They stood tall, keeping their faces stoic, their uniforms immaculate, and their presence a constant reminder of the dignity and tradition of the monarchy. The royal family, while always grateful for their service, had come to recognize that there was more to the royal guards than just their role as protectors. These men and women, despite their formal training and disciplined conduct, were people with their own emotions, thoughts, and experiences. They had become more than just figures on parade or symbols of national pride. They were silent witnesses to the royal family's joys and sorrows, always present, but rarely seen. Yet, despite the formality and distance, their role had evolved in subtle ways. The public continued to see the royal guards as pillars of strength and discipline. Visitors from around the world would gather outside Buckingham Palace, eagerly watching as the guards performed their ceremonial duties, marveling at how they remained so still, so unyielding in the face of everything that surrounded them. It was a sight that symbolized the stability of the monarchy, a reminder that despite the world changing around them, the royal guards would always remain a steadfast presence. But as the years went by, something shifted in the way the public viewed them. The rare moments of kindness, compassion, and understanding that had emerged over time, like when a guard had helped a fallen child, or when a silent gesture had comforted a grieving member of the royal family, began to resonate with people. These stories, shared far and wide, painted a picture of guards who were not just soldiers but human beings with hearts. In many ways, the relationship between the royal family and the royal guards had begun to shift too. The guards were still there to protect, still there to stand watch, but they were no longer just silent figures in the background. The royal family had come to see them as more than just part of their security detail. They were trusted, valued, and respected for the quiet ways they had offered support, even when they were not asked to. It wasn't just about following orders anymore. It was about sharing in the experiences of the royal family, offering comfort and reassurance when it was needed most. One of the most profound shifts came during the younger prince's wedding. The entire country was swept up in the excitement and joy of the occasion. It was a celebration that marked the beginning of a new chapter for the royal family. The royal couple had invited many of their closest friends and family to the event, and for the first time, the royal guards were included in a private moment. Something that had never happened before. The day of the wedding was filled with beautiful ceremonies and festivities. But behind the scenes, something more meaningful was happening. As the royal family prepared for the wedding, the guards stood quietly outside, as they always did, ensuring that everything was secure. But this time, the young prince, who had grown close to several of the guards over the years, made his way over to them. It was a rare occasion for any member of the royal family to approach the guards directly, but the prince, knowing that many of them had watched him grow up, felt a deep sense of gratitude for their service. As he walked over to Sergeant Williams, the guard who had been there for so many significant moments in the prince's life, he offered a simple, heartfelt thanks. The moment was brief, but it was powerful. The prince looked at Sergeant Williams with a sincerity that spoke volumes. He recognized the sacrifices that the guards had made over the years, standing silently at their posts, offering not just protection but also quiet support. The prince reached out and gave the sergeant a firm handshake, a gesture of appreciation that had become a symbol of how far the relationship between the royal family and the guards had come. For the guards, this moment was not just about being acknowledged by the royal family. It was a recognition of their loyalty, dedication, and the quiet, often unseen ways they had supported the monarchy. The guards had always been there, always stood at attention, and always followed the rules. But this small act of kindness from the prince spoke to the deep bond that had developed between the two groups over time. The prince's gesture showed that he saw them not just as protectors, but as people who had become an integral part of his life and the royal family's journey. It was a moment that symbolized the growth of a relationship built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared experiences. As the years continued to pass, the royal guards became more than just symbols of tradition. They became a part of the royal family's story. The quiet support they offered during moments of sorrow, their small acts of kindness, and their dedication to their duty all played a role in shaping the monarchy's image. The guards were no longer just silent figures standing at attention. They had become silent partners in the royal family's journey, there to support, protect, and witness the highs and lows of their lives. For the public, this evolving relationship between the guards and the royal family was a reminder that even the most disciplined, stoic figures could have a heart. It wasn't just about tradition and ceremony. It was about the human connection that existed between the monarchy and those who had pledged their lives to protect it. The royal guards, with their unwavering loyalty and their quiet compassion, had become a symbol not just of strength, but of the humanity that lay beneath the surface. In the end, the royal guards proved that even in the most rigid of roles, there is always room for compassion, warmth, and connection. The bond they shared with the royal family, though often unspoken and subtle, was one that would stand the test of time. And as long as the guards continued to stand at their posts, there would be moments of quiet understanding and respect. Moments that spoke louder than any words ever could. The story of the royal guards and their heartwarming moments with the royal family had become one of the most cherished narratives in modern British history. It was a reminder to everyone that, beneath the uniforms and the formalities, the men and women who served in these roles were not just soldiers, they were people, capable of offering kindness, empathy, and love in the most unexpected and beautiful ways. These moments, small but meaningful, had a profound impact and would continue to resonate with generations to come.